So thank you everybody for coming here today. I'm going to be discussing a very important topic. My name is Victor. I work as a machine learning lead for Cloud Office. And I would like to start with explaining something very important. So it's widely regarded that artificial intelligence is the fourth industrial revolution. So let's explore what this means by looking at a specific number here. So it's estimated that by 2030, artificial intelligence is going to contribute with 1.2% to the global economic growth rate. Now, this may not seem like a lot, but this is part of the growth rate, which means that this accumulates exponentially over time. So by 2030, this is going to amount to about $13.5 trillion, which is going to roughly represent about 16% of the global GDP. But what's more striking than that is that if you look at other general purpose technologies in the past, such as the steam engine, the robots, and the information technologies of the 2000s, the contribution here of AI is going to be almost as much as all of these three combined, right? So it's not just a buzzword. This is something which is going to have a profound impact everywhere. So it will cover all industries. All industries are going to be touched by artificial intelligence in some ways. And you've heard a lot of the ways in which AI is going to touch them, right? So what's important to understand here as an implication is that each and every business has a very profound, shared, common responsibility to ensure that artificial intelligence is applied in a way which supports us rather than going against us, right? Now, this starts with awareness. So awareness is not just understanding what the dangers of AI are, it's also understanding how to discern these real dangers from myths which are very sensationalized through our culture and through what people believe. So speaking of which, here is something that I do not believe that we should be worried about, although this is a very popular narrative. So if you look at all these movies here, they share a very common theme here. This is the theme of artificially creating some being which at some point it gains sentience, it becomes super intelligent, and it rebels against the humans. Now, this narrative is something which has been prevalent in our culture and is very embedded in it far before the introduction and the creation of artificial intelligence. So if you think about novels like Frankenstein, let's say, or one of the first literary works ever created, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh, all of them share the same narrative. And the reason why this resonates so much with our culture is because it underlies a very foundational fear in humans. And this is the fear of losing control. And now it's becoming really relevant with the idea of creating artificial general intelligence, AGI. And this is, in fact, going to be created. So the median estimate of researchers of when artificial general intelligence is going to be created, I think, is the year 2045. But there's a very fundamental difference between AGI and humans. So everything that we have now is artificial narrow intelligence, right? All the algorithms which are transforming businesses, they are narrow intelligence. And what this means is that they have a very specific and single task, normally, and they cannot adapt based on an environment which is changing. Also, the goals that they have, they're predefined, they're programmed. Now, if we speak about artificial general intelligence, it's going to perform much more general tasks. So it's going to cover a wide range of tasks, similar to humans. It is going to adapt, right, to the surrounding environment. But there will still be one very fundamental difference with human beings, and this is the ability to have personal goals. Now, we don't believe that this is possible. You need to have personal goals to have intent, and you need to have intent to rebel against something, right? Now, this is not possible because there's a lot of prerequisites to that, right? To have personal goals, you need to have free will. To have free will, you need to have some emotions which are going to inform your decisions based on your personal desires. But personal desires require things like self-awareness as well. Well, having self-awareness means you need to have the cognition to understand yourself and understand your surroundings as well. Now, ideally, actually, the most intelligent artificial intelligence nowadays is not more intelligent than an earthworm. This is about the same level of cognition that AGI will have. Now, you might be confused about that because you know all these complex tasks that artificial intelligence is performing, but in fact, it's actually very stupid. And a very good way to explain this is to think about a very famous thought experiment, which is the Chinese room. So imagine you're inside a room. You receive some messages which are coming in Chinese. You do not understand Chinese, but what you can do is you can respond to them by following a very detailed manual with instructions to match all the questions with the answers. Now, on the outside, it might look like you're understanding Chinese, but in reality, you're just following rules. Well, this is kind of similar to what artificial intelligence does. If you think about the large language models, such as GPT or Gemini, they learn from patterns in data, from large amounts of data, so patterns and connections between the different words, and based on that, they predict the next best word. But in reality, they do not have the same understanding of the text as humans do, right? So artificial intelligence gaining independency and rebelling against us, this is just as probable as your calculator sitting on your desk, waking up in the middle of the night, gaining self-consciousness, and starting to do some calculation because it feels like it, right? So just for fun, this is how this is going to look like according to artificial intelligence, right? This is an AI-generated image. But this is not to say that there aren't any actual dangers of AI, right? So if you look at this graph here, I've tried to classify the different AI algorithms, some of the popular ones, here according to two dimensions. So the amount of tasks that they can do, this is on the horizontal axis, right? And the amount with the degree to which they engage with the real world. So if you look at things like the GPT app, for instance, it can do a lot of different tasks, right? It can understand text, it can understand voice, it can generate images. All of this is going to be part of the same conversation. It doesn't engage a lot with the physical world because all it does is reply to prompts. On the other hand, you have things like autonomous vehicles, which are far above that, which also do a lot of different tasks, but they engage a lot more directly with the physical world. And the more we move to the upper right corner of this graph, the bigger the dangers become, because the models are much more capable of interacting with the world, right? And as we heard before from the first presentation, the future of AI is going to be building autonomous agents. The problem here is not that these autonomous agents are going to become independent and rebel against us. The problem is much more weird, actually. And let me demonstrate what I mean by this. So suppose you have a task. You need to take some robot parts, and you need to assemble them into a robot which is going to walk from point A to point B, let's say. Now, if you approach this with classical programming, you're going to give very specific instructions to this program. You're going to tell it exactly how to assemble the legs, how to use those legs to reach from point A to point B. But with artificial intelligence, it's a lot different. You don't give it instructions. You just give it a task, and you let it figure out itself how it's going to achieve this task. And it turns out that artificial intelligence is going to achieve this by assembling itself into a tower, which is going to fall over to reach point B, right? Now, technically, this is a solution to the problem, right? But this is not what you envisioned, most probably. And this same type of issue is something which translates to the actual pressing ethical issues that we have nowadays. And these actual pressing and real issues are right here. These are all the small algorithms that people do not currently pay a lot of attention to, but this is what's transforming businesses, right? These are the algorithms which make the recommendation algorithms, which are discovering drugs, which are playing games of Go and chess, and so on, the ones which are segmenting customers and gaining customer insights. They are all here. Now, they may seem harmless, right? Because they don't do a lot of different things. Most of them do a single thing. And they do not engage with the world, but they're used by humans. Humans incorporate them into processes. And by doing so, they inherit our own autonomy, our own biases, and our own breadth of tasks that we are characterized with, right? So, to give you a more realistic narrative of what's going to happen, how many of you here have read this novel, The Trial by Franz Kafka. Okay, there's a few people here. So for those that haven't read it, this is a novel in which the main character, Joseph K., he is being accused. He goes through the criminal system, but he's never told why he is guilty. This is a very horrifying novel because he is rendered powerless by the bureaucracy. He does not know how to defend himself because he doesn't know why he's guilty, and eventually he's being executed. Right? And if you think that this is science fiction, let me show you the Compass system. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but this is an AI-driven algorithm which is used by the US criminal justice system to make decisions such as whether to keep somebody in jail or not, right? This is a big problem because, much like the Kafka novel, such types of algorithms are not very explainable. You cannot explain why they perform the decisions that they do. And this is very, you can draw a parallel between the ways that companies use machine learning, because companies would use machine learning to, let's say, decline loans to somebody, if you're a bank. They might use machine learning to decline job applications based on AI, which screens CVs and makes decisions, right? So if you want to list all these actual problems, let's try and do that. So first we have the problem of explainability, right? This is the black box problem. These are all these algorithms which cannot be explained in a very simple way. Now, fortunately, there's a lot of development towards what we call explainable AI. There's methods in data science with which you can explain these algorithms, but not a lot of people utilize them. So as business stakeholders and as managers, it's your responsibility to require these from the data scientists which are developing the solutions. The next problem is the problem of fairness and bias. So the AI, which is performing the job screening, the CV screening for job applications, is a very good example. So imagine that you train this algorithm with some data which is associated with past hiring decisions. But maybe in the past you've hired more people who are male instead of female, right? So the AI is going to interpret that being male is a success factor for being a successful hire, right? In this case, it's going to inherit our own bias through the historical data that we feed it, right? So the way that you can deal with this, well, first you need to have a very big and representative data set, but it's very important to establish audits whenever you're developing AI algorithms. And these can be peer reviews from other data scientists who are unrelated to the projects. It could also be ethical committees which you can internally assemble inside your company. Then the next problem is accountability. So developers need to be accountable for building AI systems which should be ethical, right? The way that you establish this is with compliance, right? There's a lot of different standards, such as GDPR, ISO, OECD, which are already covering this issue, right? But what you should be doing is you should be incorporating this into your own company policies, and you should be incorporating this into trainings, which should be mandatory for all the employees inside the company. And last but not least, we have data privacy. This is the data flattening problem. So would you be okay if somebody uses your Facebook posts to generate other posts which politically influence people? This could be a problem. Would you be okay if somebody uses your artwork to generate other artwork based on yours? Would you be okay if somebody has access to your private information, such as your personal banking account, your address, somebody that you don't know? So the way that this is dealt with is two things: transparency and security. Transparency means that it's fundamental to ask for consent before using user data. And security means hiring security individuals which are going to perform all these security measures which are going to protect the privacy of individuals. This includes privacy-enhancing technologies such as data encryption and so on. Now, last but not least, I want to show you one more, I think, very important and fundamental narrative, which is very probable as well. So this is The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster. Now, in this novel, people become entirely dependent on machines. The idea here is that if you pass the management of our civilization to machines, at some point we stop having the incentive to understand it ourselves. Right? For a very long time, most of our civilization has been covered in books. But the books do not run the civilization for us. So we always need to teach the next generation right? This makes a chain of transferring knowledge which spans over tens of thousands of generations, right? Well, what happens if this chain stops at some point? This is a very horrific scenario, and I think people are just now starting to realize what could be the dangers associated with that. Because programmers, they forget how to program. Employees forget how to write emails. Students forget how to write homeworks. And this can have very dire consequences. But I think there's two pillars which are very important to deal with this. One is education, and the other one is culture. But what does this mean for corporations? Well, you should be making sure that people back their skills with proof. You need to perform live technological assessments during live interviews before you hire somebody. This is extremely important. You should make sure that things like certifications, they should be part of business development plans. And last but not least, I think what's very important is to make sure that you hire people who are not just good on CV, on paper. You should hire people that have the spark and the passion inside them for what they're doing. Because these are the kind of people that create this culture and this environment which stimulates the type of performance which cannot be achieved by large language models. So as a final statement, I would like to say that the AI challenge is not simply technological. It's profoundly human. And it's our responsibility to commit to transparency, to ethical AI, and to education to ensure that AI supports humanity rather than going against it. Thank you.
But can you please, just for a second, they ask you, can you bring back the slide with ANI, AGI, and human brain? And then I will ask you the question that we have in Slido.
I'm trying, but it doesn't work.
Sorry for the anonymous person who asked. Okay, there we go. So meanwhile, when do you expect the AGI to be created?
Yeah, so most of researchers agree that AGI is going to be created before the end of the century. And the median estimate of when this is going to happen is the year 2045, I think. In reality, nobody knows exactly, but researchers do expect that to happen by 2045.
Okay, there are 50% chance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.